With the New York Jets 2024 season all but over, speculation surrounding the team's offseason decisions are well underway. Today, we'll be breaking down the elite regime that the Jets are going to want to go after this offseason, along with some other pairings that could be interesting and shape the franchise's future. All coming up here on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Long.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here on this Thursday afternoon edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. I am your host, Connor Long, coming with you with, a video. I didn't think I was going to be making this early. At this point, entering a Week 17 matchup, I anticipated we'd be talking about, all right, Jets have clinched their playoff spot. We're, last two games of the season, we're talking about the wild card, even divisional round. People were thinking right off the bat, possibly getting a wild card bye when the season first started. But nope, here we are talking about the team's next head coach, general manager, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I mean, what a disappointing season. I want to get your thoughts in the chat, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. Where you think this season falls among the most disappointing seasons in franchise history. I put it up at number one. There were Super Bowl aspirations for this team, and for the team to fail as miserably as they did, a 4-11 start to the season, it's just brutal. It's brutal. You can't make it up. You simply can't. But here we are. We got to, you got to face the reality head on. This team's looking for a new head coach, looking for a new general manager, looking for a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator. So we're going to educate you guys on all the top candidates you should be looking out for this offseason. Before we do so, just want to let you know, everyone, well, first off, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa to all of you guys who celebrate. Yesterday was not only Christmas, but it was actually the 1-year anniversary of the channel. So I just want to thank you guys for all the support you've given, not only myself, but also just the channel and how much you've helped me grow over the past year. So the past year actually now. So I just want to I really appreciate all that you guys do. And I see you in the chat, Chris. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That's the free way to help this channel grow. Jay, appreciate it. But nevertheless, we're going to get right into the main topic of today's video. So I've different sort of regimes. Well, I'll kind of give you the gist of what I'm doing before we get into it. I have different regimes that we're going to break down today. For example, I have different topics such as overrated, young innovative minds. I have ideal. I have, overrated. I said guys you want to steer clear from. So I'm gonna, before we bring it up, I see a comment from our guy Brian Glick tuning in as a member. Appreciate you, Brian. Just when you think they can't let you down anymore, here comes the Jets at Bills to take our disappointment to a new level. I'll get into the game at the end of the show, and we obviously have my pregame show every Sunday with Matt O'Leary. But yeah, this game's not going to be fun. I expect it to be something similar to the Arizona game we saw following the Halloween win. So I'm just telling you guys right now, it is not going to be a fun game to watch on Sunday. But here, we'll bring it up on the screen. So here is my first topic. Let me know if you could see the screen. I think it's coming through. Let's see. Yep, looks like you guys can see my screen. So I'm going to throw this full screen layout. So here's my my first topic. I'll break down every single candidate and why I have it here. This is, I think, the best possible regime, coaching staff, whatever you want to call it, if the Jets target and go after young, innovative minds. Start with head coach Liam Cohen. His name's been coming around the head coach conversations, especially the Jets job this past week or so. He's young. He's 39. He has a ton of connections with the Bucs. As you could see, I have him taking a defensive coordinator there, Larry Foote, and the GM, Mike Greenberg. But, I mean, the Bucs offense has been elite. They're ranking 7th in offensive DVOA this season. He's worked with Baker Mayfield, really helped turn around his career, help utilize Mike Evans, Bucky Irving, the young running back. He's done great work with him. So if the Jets want to go with a young, innovative mind for the head coaching job, I think Liam Cohen is their best option out there. As for the offensive coordinator job, Joe Blameyer, I put him as an offensive coordinator candidate in my article for Jets X Factor recently. Recommend you guys checking it out. Appreciate your support over there as well. So he's in his 9th season right now with the Chiefs. Obviously, a ton of time now with the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. I think he's only 42 still, though. I think he's a captivating candidate really for the Jets offensive coordinator job because he has experience in not only right now he's the passing game coordinator for the Chiefs. Oh, sorry, it looks like we changed the slide over here. Not only is the passing game coordinator for the Chiefs, he's really helped work his way up the hierarchy, so to speak, in the Chiefs coaching staff, director of offensive quality control, pass game analyst, assistant quarterback coach, wide receivers coach, and now he is the passing game coordinator. Last year, passing game was really elite, 8th in offensive DVOA, 6th in yards per game. Again, he knows what it's like to be a part of an elite coaching staff. He knows what it's like to work with elite playmakers. Just a few examples, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and many more. So I like him for his experience being around a really smart coaching staff and his ability to utilize and, get the most out of his playmakers. My defensive coordinator here is Larry Foote. He's an interesting one because right now he's the linebackers coach for the Bucs. He's the linebackers coach, but he's also the passing game coordinator for the Bucs. So he's a really interesting name here, having experience working on both sides of the football, obviously. So I'm a big fan of Foote. He's done great work as the linebackers coach in Tampa Bay, working with Devin White, Levante David, two All-Pros, Pro Bowl linebackers. They're 8th in pass offensive DVOA. So he's interesting to me because, again, he's a wealth of knowledge on the defensive side of the ball, and he can also help, work with Liam Cohen and Blaine Meyer from an offensive standpoint too. So I like him. If the Jets are to go the young, innovative route, Cohen will, poach him from Tampa Bay. And, another connection from Tampa Bay that Liam Cohen has, who's an interesting candidate for the Jets GM job. Peter Schrager said he expects the Jets to interview him once the season comes to a close. That's Long Island's very own Mike Greenberg. He's in his second season with the Bucs as their assistant general manager, 15th overall with the organization. It's been the past few years now, really, due to, where he's been viewed as an up-and-coming GM candidate, a rising star in the NFL front office space. Some describe him as. He's really known for his cap expertise. He's been the cap expert really under general manager Jason Licht. Obviously the past 2 seasons as his assistant general manager, but even when he was in smaller roles, all of his experience comes with the cap. So if you're going to get a guy like Mike Greenberg, I'm telling you, you're going to get a wealth of knowledge when it comes to, managing players from a salary cap standpoint. Helped re-sign Mike Evans, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, Baker Mayfield. His other roles are interesting, again, also around the cap, really. Vice President of Football Administration, Director of Football Administration, and Coordinator of Football Administration. Also, something to keep in mind, which is interesting with Greenberg's resume here, is he's worked with the Jets in the past. He served as a football administration intern with the team in 2008 and 2009. So he has some experience, prior experience with the organization. So he's an interesting name. Again, if the Jets are going to look for young, innovative minds during their head coaching search, I think this is the best regime slash coaching staff that you could really find. But here, Sorry, it didn't let me move it. Now we'll go to the second slide. This is, I think, the best coaching staff regime. If the Jets want to go ahead and draft and develop a quarterback early on, whether it's the first round, they go out and somehow Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are on the board when the Jets are on the clock. Jets go out and draft him, even a Jalen Milroe in the second round. If the Jets want to really prioritize the development of a quarterback, this is the Jets' best option here. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Cliff Kingsbury. I really like him. His work with the quarterbacks, serving as the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator right now. He has played a huge role in their resurgence this season. Washington's offense ranks 4th in points per game this season. Also, to look back on his head coaching experience, spent 4 seasons in Arizona serving as their head coach, 28-37 record, including a 12-5 season and a playoff appearance. Head coaching experience, knows how to work and develop young talents such as Jayden Daniels, Kyler Murray, worked with a ton of other guys in college, was an offensive analyst under Lincoln Riley, helped work with Caleb Williams last year. So he has a ton of experience working and developing quarterbacks, and that's the name of the game for the Jets. The Jets have not been able to find stability from an offensive front and also develop a quarterback in well over a decade. So if the Jets want to find hopefully their next, starting quarterback for the next decade plus, I would not mind bringing Kingsbury in as a head coach. I really wouldn't. I would think I think it would be a great hire if they want to, again, really prioritize developing a quarterback, and someone who goes right with him, who has a ton of experience developing quarterbacks. He's also on Washington's coaching staff right now. That's Brian Johnson. He was the former, he called plays for the Eagles, worked with Jalen Hurts. Now he's serving as the assistant head coach and pass game coordinator for the Washington Commanders. I mean, again, he's played a huge role in their turnaround this season. Fifth passed offensive pass DVOA. He again helped Jaden Daniels a ton, and his work with Jalen Hurts is what is really interesting to me. He called plays last season for the Eagles. They ranked 10th in offensive DVOA under his play calling. He is someone who has play calling experience. That's why I'm a fan of him. He could, even if you bring Kingsbury in, I wouldn't want Kingsbury as a play calling head coach. I'm okay if you bring Brian Johnson in, obviously under Cliff Kingsbury, and he'd call plays. I would be a huge fan of that hire. I actually listed him as an underrated head coach candidate. I think head coach candidate might be a bit of a stretch for a guy like Brian Johnson, but I'd have absolutely no problem. I'd be a huge fan of the hire if they decide to bring him in as the offensive coordinator next season due to his work developing, going along with Cliff Kingsbury and developing young quarterbacks while showing some success calling offensive plays. As the defensive coordinator on this staff, if the Jets were to draft and develop a quarterback, I have Ken Norton Jr. Now, Norton has experience as a defensive coordinator with the Seahawks and a defensive coordinator with the Raiders. As you see, he's coming from the Commanders coaching staff, so again, kind of from that same tree. Cliff Kingsbury would bring two of his guys from Washington over to Florham Park, but he has experience as a defensive coordinator with the Seahawks and the Raiders. He's worked with several Pro Bowlers, Shaquille Griffin, Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, a ton of these guys. He's helped lead the Raiders to a 12-win season. He's brought the Seahawks to help bring them to several playoff appearances. So Norton is really appealing to me. He really is. I like him. Again, he has defensive experience. I value experience. Whether it is the head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or general manager that this team is looking for, I think you really need someone with experience unless you surround them with a really solid veteran staff. That's just how I feel. I'm tired of, again, whether it's the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, or general manager, this isn't a job for first timers. I'm tired of taking a flyer on a Robert Saleh, taking a flyer on an Adam Gase, and having them learn on the spot in one of the biggest the biggest media market in the world. I'm done with it. I'm not having it happen anymore. It's killed this team the past few seasons. It really has. That's where I sit right now for the high coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. If you want to draft and develop a quarterback, last but certainly not least, the general manager in this regime, I think ideally would be John Dorsey. Dorsey served as a general manager for the Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs, 56-55 record over his career as a general manager. He's a personnel executive right now with the Lions. So he's a really interesting name to watch. I think he's going to get a GM job this offseason. Obviously, you look what Detroit has done the past few years, coupled with his experience as a general manager. He's drafted elite talent. He's helped draft Patrick Mahomes as a general manager, Travis Kelce, Eric Fisher, Marcus Peters, Chris Jones, Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward. Those are some of his main draft picks. So he's done great in the drafts over his career, and he has GM experience. Again, I value experience tremendously, and he has successful experience as a general manager. So I'd absolutely love John Dorsey, but there is my ideal regime if the Jets want to go ahead and draft and develop a quarterback. Now, let's keep it moving. If the Jets want to prioritize experience, here it is. Pete Carroll. Adam Schefter reported yesterday that Pete Carroll's open to returning to the sidelines. He's 74 years old right now. He's older. So that said, I think at max, if the Jets were to hire Pete Carroll, you're getting 3 to 4 years out of him. Now, I'm not saying the Jets should hire Pete Carroll, but if they really want to go all in on experience, I think Pete Carroll's your guy here. Obviously, we all know what happened. Came in, coached the 94 team. It was a one and done with the Jets. So he coached one season with the Jets, then boom, he was out. 1994 season, obviously the fake Spike Dan Marino year. I put it, I think, in my JetX column. I put it as the 5th most disappointing season in franchise history. So again, not saying I don't want Pete Carroll here, but I would not mind bringing him in as the team's next head coach if they really want to go all in on experience here. His offensive coordinator, I have it. Let's see, I missed it. Darrell Bevell. So he served as his offensive coordinator in Seahawks during his time. He's currently serving as the pass game coordinator and QB coach for the Dolphins. Served as the Jaguars offensive coordinator. Again, I think Carroll would bring him in because Carroll's someone as a head coach in his career. He's really gone to his former connections. So Bevell had a ton of success under Carroll as the offensive coordinator in Seattle. So Carroll gets another head coaching job. Why not bring Bevell with him? So I think that's what he'd do for an offensive coordinator. And then again, I have Norton coming with him if he wants to go defensive coordinator. I just explained his experience as a defensive coordinator. He's had 2 stints, obviously, in his career as a DC. And for the general manager, all of these guys at some point in their career have been with the Seahawks. They have Nolan Teasley. Now, Connor Hughes reported just a few weeks ago that Teasley's somewhat of a sleeper candidate to watch for the GM job. He is in his 12th season with the Seahawks right now. I think this is let's see, let me get the exact number. He's 12th season with the Seahawks, and then his third or fourth season as the assistant general manager. He's been the director of pro personnel, assistant director of pro personnel, and a pro personnel scout for 2 seasons. So again, he has experience working in both personnel and scouting. So he's an interesting name to watch. Again, prioritize experience. I think this is the ideal regime to look for right here. Moving on. Jets want to get a defensive focus in here because I know the talk is we want someone who has experience. I 1000% agree. And then a lot of people want to focus on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't necessarily disagree with them. But let's say the Jets want to go ahead and take a look from a different lens. They want to go after a defensive mind. I think Aaron Glenn is their best option at head coach. Obviously, we know Glenn. He spent 8 seasons with the Jets. Jets drafted him in the first round. And also, his experience with the Jets organization goes just beyond his playing days. I don't know if you guys actually knew this, but he retired after the 2008 season. Then he returned to the Jets organization for 2 more years. I think he was a personnel scout for the Jets for 2 seasons. And then he transitioned down to the sideline. And he's been a coach ever since. Right now, he's in his 4th season with Detroit. Their defense has been elite this season. Obviously, he's calling plays over there. Let me get their they rank 5th in defensive DVOA right now, so they've been elite this season. I think they had one poor game recently against Buffalo, obviously allowing over 40 points, but they've been elite the past few seasons. Now, his name's kind of been floating around. He's connections to the Jets organization, and I think he's ready for a head coaching job. So Jets want to shift their mind to a bit of a defensive focus. Go ahead and bring in Aaron Glenn right here. I think that's what you got to do. And for the offensive coordinator, I think he'd take Detroit's passing game coordinator with him, and that's Tanner Engstrand. Again, he's in his 5th season with the Lions. Similar to Blameyer, he's had several different roles on the offensive staff: tight ends coach, offensive quality, control coordinator. He's had several different roles, so he's kind of versatile, so to speak. And also, it's funny because Engstrand's fascinating in the sense that his coaching career expands beyond the NFL. He spent a season in 2020, it was, serving as the DC Defenders offensive coordinator of the XFL. So his XFL experience as well, which is really interesting. My one concern that I think might stop the Jets from landing a guy like Engstrand is, suppose Ben Johnson goes out and he takes a job, which is expected. There has been speculation about that the past few years, but now it's as close to a lock as it possibly can be that Ben Johnson goes ahead and accepts a head coaching job this offseason. Then I think Engstrand would most likely be the favorite to take over the Detroit's offensive coordinator job. But hey, if he doesn't get that promotion and the Jets could go out and poach him, I would 1000% do that. Now let's move over to the defensive coordinator job. Glenn brings someone he works very close to on his defensive staff in Detroit, and that is linebackers coach Kelvin Sheppard. Now, Sheppard's an interesting one. Similar to Glenn, they came in the same season. They're both in their 4th season with the Lions. He started his tenure in Detroit as an outside linebackers coach. Now he oversees the entire unit. So he is I'd say he probably has the second most say on Detroit's defensive staff, just behind Glenn. So he's obviously kind of working his way up the ranks over there in Detroit. He's helped work with Alex Anzalone, who's, obviously had career seasons these past few years. First round pick Jack Campbell last year, who had a great season. Malcolm Rodriguez. So he's worked with a ton of talent at the linebacker position. And again, it would be interesting, would Glenn call defensive plays or would Shepard? But you bring these two defensive minds in along with Engstrand. I think that's a really, really solid coaching staff. Again, if you want to, focus on the defensive side of the ball. Then for the GM, I have Ray Agnew. Now, Agnew's a name. He's been floating around, really since the Jets fired Joe Douglas. It was Ray Agnew. He's a name to watch. I like Agnew, and especially if you get these three guys from Detroit, hey, why not bring Agnew with him? This would you basically promote the four most prominent figures from Detroit's coaching staff and front office who aren't serving as a general manager, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or a head coach. So you're basically promoting the four main guys from Detroit, which would be really interesting if the Jets went ahead and did that. But Agnew's in his fourth season with the Lions. He's their assistant general manager. He actually played in the NFL for a few seasons. He was a first round pick. Matter of fact, he's interestingly connected with the Jets in a way. His son, Ray Agnew III, is actually a pro scout. I think he's in his 8th season with the organization, serving as a pro scout with the team. So that would be interesting, obviously, because he has the connection with his son. If the Jets want to focus on the defensive side of the ball, again, this is the perfect regime to do so. Agnew had another role. He was with the Rams for a little while. Yeah, he helped them acquire several key players that helped them, go ahead and win the Super Bowl in 2022. He was with them for 4 seasons, director of player personnel. They had 3 playoff appearances, including Super Bowl berth under him in the front office. So Agnew's an interesting name to watch for GM, and I'm a huge fan of him. That is the Jets' best option if they want to go ahead and prioritize the defensive side of the football. Now, let's keep it moving. This is, I think, the most overrated option that we could get. This is the most overrated coaching staff. And again, I'm going to let you know, I don't think, for example, Ben Johnson is going to be a bad NFL head coach. I don't think that whatsoever. I don't think he's going to live up to the hype that, he's been garnering, especially the past few weeks, past few months. He's, already came out with this strict list of requirements for a head coaching job that he's going to take. Let's look ourselves in the eye. Ben Johnson, he's done great things as Detroit's offensive coordinator. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a little much for him to come out here and make all these demands when he really hasn't shown anything. He hasn't been an NFL head coach in his career. It's one thing if a Mike Vrabel, who's won the Coach of the Year award, brought in, won in the playoffs, he's had a ton of success as a head coach, is going to go out and make these demands. But for someone like Ben Johnson, who's never been a head coach in his career, to go out and make demands like such, I think it might be a little bit much. So like I said, I do not think he's going to be a bad NFL head coach per se. I just don't think he's going to live up to the expectations that he's been receiving. Another one is quarterbacks coach for the Lions, for the offensive coordinator job. Quarterbacks coach J.T. Barrett obviously spent a few seasons in the NFL, was a quarterback at Ohio State. Again, I've heard his name float around. I don't really have to say much about him. I've heard his name float around as an offensive coordinator job, and I just don't think he has enough experience as an assistant quarterback coach to go ahead and accept an offensive coordinator job this offseason. Maybe he gets one next year or the year after. I just don't expect it. I just don't think he deserves one. This hiring cycle now for the defensive coordinator job, similar to Barrett, Andre Patterson. He's the Giants defensive line coach right now. He's worked with Dexter Lawrence. I've heard his name come around as a potential defensive coordinator. I do not want to go near him whatsoever. Other than Dexter Lawrence, the Giants defensive line really hasn't been elite over the past few years, so to speak. He's worked with young talent, but congrats, you figured out the juggernaut that is unlocking Kayvon Thibodeau's potential and Dexter Lawrence's potential. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic there, but I don't want to go near Patterson, especially this offseason. He has experience as a defensive coordinator, but I don't want to risk it. And lastly, for the GM job, here I have Mike Borgonzi. Borgonzi's really worked his way up the ranks in the Chiefs front office here. I just think he's receiving too much credit for what Kansas City's done over the past few years. They've drafted great, but is it really him Not necessarily. Obviously, he's not the GM over there right now. So, although he's played a role in roster construction specifically, I just think he's getting too much credit for what Kansas City has done over the past few years. So, I don't think he's going to be worth all the hype as a general manager. Hasn't been a general manager in his career, so I would tab him as overrated, so to speak. So that is my overrated regime, and I see you guys in the comments. Don't worry, I'm going to get to all of your comments once we are done with this. I think let's see, we have I think we only have 1 or 2 slides left, so we're almost done here. But appreciate the support. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You want to call into the show, you could do so by clicking the pinned comment in the chat. Now let's keep it moving. Here is my worst case scenario. I think this is the worst possible solution the Jets could possibly do for the new regime, the new coaching staff. At head coach, I have Steve Spagnuolo. Now, Spags, I know a lot of my listeners and a lot of the listeners of Jets content overall are don't mind Spags, and they want to give him an interview. I know Neil, I know Oscar the Grouch. I'm sure there's others out there. All right, this is where I'm going to start. Spent 3 years as the Rams head coach. He had the terrible 1-15 season his first year. Then it was an absolute mess. He ended up finishing his tenure with a record of 10-38, and he was out after 3 seasons. He said he would absolutely take another head coaching job. I mean, you got to stay away from this guy. 1-15 season in 2009 and a 2-14 season in 2011. He clearly, I think he is the perfect example of someone who is a great defensive coordinator. Don't get me wrong. I think he's the best defensive coordinator in all of football, and I think very fondly of his defensive mind, but he clearly has shown he's not able to be a head coach. Boom. Proof is in the pudding right there. 10-38 during his first stint as a head coach. So no, you gotta get away from Spags. Now let's move over to the offensive coordinator, David Girardi. Similar to, I was talking about Andre Patterson on the last slide and JT Barrett. Girardi's currently serving as the quarterback's coach for the Chiefs. Now, again, I've heard his name come around, offensive coordinator job. I just don't think he is I don't think he's ready this offseason. Again, he's worked with Patrick Mahomes, great. But I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is an elite quarterback, no matter who his quarterback coach is. So I just don't think Girardi is ready. Now let's move over to the defensive coordinator job. This is an interesting one. I threw Wink Martindale in here because Wink is someone, he served as the Giants defensive coordinator these past few seasons. Now he's Michigan's DC. I simply don't want him because he's shown he could be an okay defensive coordinator, but there was a lot of chaos with him in the Giants organization last year, and that is not what I want. I want a complete cultural overhaul. I am tired of all the chaos. He hasn't been with the Jets organization, but I'm done with that. I'm done dealing with chaos and all of this. So I want to stay clear of someone like Wink Martindale, who has caused chaos in his prior coaching career. So I don't want to go near Wink. And then lastly, GM job, Louis Riddick. The Jets are scheduled to interview Riddick. He's currently an ESPN analyst on television. I'm sure you guys see him. He has 13 years of front office experience, but he hasn't been in an NFL front office since 2013. So he's on TV, and don't get me wrong, I think he knows his stuff from obviously a GM standpoint, but I worry about 2013 was completely different. Not a lot of general managers use analytics. That's one, and the league has just completely changed from, a hiring standpoint, a schematical standpoint. So much has changed since 2013. So I understand he's on TV talking about the team, but no, you got to stay away from him in the general manager job. Has never been a GM in his career, and he's been out of NFL front offices in over a decade. Now here it is, the last slide, and here it is, the best case scenario, the ideal scenario for the New York Jets. I think we're all on the same page here in terms of bringing Mike Vrabel in, coach of the year. He's brought a team to the playoffs several times. He's maximized the most potential out of all of his playmakers. He is a leader of men. He's going to come in and put these guys in their places. He's going to be able to surround himself with a really solid coaching staff that is going to make the Jets winners for the first time in well over a decade, and hopefully bring them to the playoffs for the first time in 14 seasons. So I don't think I really need to say much there on a front for Vrabel, but move over to the offensive coordinator job. Josh McCown. I mean, McCown spent a few seasons with the Jets as a quarterback. I like McCown because, first off, he knows what it's like to be a main figure in the New York market. He knows what it's like. The New York media, I mentioned it earlier on, but it's it's the toughest media market in the world. So he is fit to be a main figure in the New York market. He showed it when he was quarterback with the Jets for a few seasons. He's actually interviewed for 2 head coaching jobs. It's crazy to think he interviewed for the Texans head coaching job in 2020 and 2021, just a year after he retired. So it's crazy to think he's still on the younger side. He's 45 years old. He's done great work working with his former Jets teammate Sam Darnold this year. He's led him to really a breakout season. Let me get the exact numbers. Sam ranks 5th in touchdowns and 6th in passing yards. Sam has said great things about Josh McCown. So I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on him. 12-year veteran, well respected around the league. And it's something that's interesting that I really like about McCown is what his ability to connect with players. Really, retiring in 2020, he knows what it's like to be a part of the modern day offense, and he's able to connect with players. So that's the main thing that I really like about McCown. Now let's move over to the defensive coordinator job. I don't know if you guys I want to get your thoughts on this defensive coordinator, because I don't really know if you guys are going to like the name I picked here to be the Jets defensive coordinator of the future. That's Ron Rivera. The reason I like him is he has a ton of experience as a head coach. I mean, he was a head coach for 13 seasons, 102 and 103. He's brought a team to the Super Bowl. He led the Panthers to a 15-1 season. My main thing is he helped as a head coach turn a really, really struggling 2-14 Panthers team back to a winning season in a really short amount of time. 4 playoff appearances in 5 seasons from 2013 to 2017, brought them to the Super Bowl in 2015. Got hired later by the Commanders in 2020. Obviously, that did not go as well as he thought it would. 26-40-1 was his record, including 0-1 in the playoffs. He was fired following a disappointing 4-13 season, and he hasn't had a head coaching job since. Again, he's turned struggling teams into Super Bowl contenders in a short amount of time. So I am all on board with Rivera, especially if you could bring him in as a defensive coordinator. I put him again in my JetX article as an underrated head coach candidate, but if you could get him as a defensive coordinator, which he said publicly last offseason, he would take a defensive coordinator job, I think that's a no-brainer for the Jets that you bring in Ron Rivera as the team's next defensive coordinator. Now, last but not least, GM. This is someone who the Jets have already interviewed, and this is Thomas Dimitroff. He has experience as a GM in the NFL. I think, let me get his exact record up here. What was his, see, do I have it? 113-95 was his record, 6 playoff appearances and Super Bowl berth. Obviously, that Super Bowl was the year the Falcons somehow blew the 28-3 lead to the Patriots. So it's not his fault that the team blew the lead. I mean, he's a 2-time Super Bowl winning executive and could have been a Super Bowl winning general manager. He was with them from 2006 to 2020, and there's not much to dislike about him. In basically every aspect that a GM really needs to be solid in, he's been solid in his entire tenure over in Atlanta, whether it's drafting. He's drafted 11 Pro Bowlers, including Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. He's had success on day 3, drafted Grady Jarrett on day 3. He's had some key free agent signings. I mean, he traded for Tony Gonzalez. I'd say the one gripe there that I will say I have with him is he messed up some of the when some of his rookies were up for second contract extensions. He had some issues with the cap there, but he runs his own analytical site now called Summer Sports that NFL teams rely on. So he's very analytical, and that's what I really like about him. So that is my ideal regime, and that wraps it up. That's my scenario. If you're just joining us, I built a bunch of different regimes for the Jets to look at, and I evaluated them. So could go back and look at that at the end of the show. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to get to all of your questions in the chat shortly. Don't worry, but smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate the support. Chris, appreciate it. Jay, see you in the chat. Appreciate it. Brian, I brought this up. Appreciate you, Brian. Mike, good to see you in the chat. Tigo, appreciate you tuning in. Everyone subscribe to Tigo's channel. Does great stuff. One of the best Jet content creators out there. Alan, appreciate the support. Appreciate you tuning in. Yes, Brian, appreciate it. Smash the like button, everyone. Appreciate all the support. Yep, Alan, appreciate you. You and Wild Wave. I'm sure there are others in the chat, but you and Wild Wave are certainly some of I remember from day one, you and Wild Wave have been 2 of my most loyal listeners, so I really appreciate all that you've done for me, Alan. Means a lot. Kingsbury should remain with DC and ride with Jaden Daniels. He's a legit OC. Don't like him as a head coach. So here's why I like Kingsbury, Alan. I laid it out when I brought him up on the screen, but First, he has head coaching experience. He's only 9 games under 500 as a head coach. He's brought a team to the playoffs, and I put him in the scenario where if the Jets were to draft a quarterback, if the Jets were to draft a Cam Ward, a Shedeur Sanders, a Jalen Milroe, try to start him right away, I think Kingsbury's a great option because, look over his resume. He's done great. He's done great work developing young quarterbacks over his coaching career. He was actually a backup quarterback with the Jets for a season. So if the Jets really want to rely on a young rookie quarterback, I think Kingsbury's your guy who could help develop him. But yeah, I think it might be best for him too if he wants to sit back in DC as a coordinator. He's done great things. I think Jaden Daniels is probably going to win Rookie of the Year, or no, certainly Offensive Rookie of the Year. So why not run it back? But if the Jets want to really draft and develop a young guy, I think Kingsbury's a good option. Not to mention he interviewed for the job in 2019, where Jets ultimately made Adam Gase the head coach. We all know how that went, and then he took the job, obviously, in Arizona. So if they want to draft a guy, Kingsbury's an interesting one. Tigo, Cliff this early after being fired and now just getting to Washington is why I would avoid him. I don't know what that says. Give him. Typo. Give him a few more years with the Commies before going to be a head coach again. Again, you want to draft and develop a quarterback. I think he's the one who gives you the best shot for the quarterback to have the most success and maximize the quarterback's potential. So that's my stance, and I understand why people don't like Kingsbury. I mean, there was an issue in Arizona where he lost the locker room for a little while, and that ultimately led to his firing. But you want to get a quarterback in and develop him quickly. Kingsbury, I think, is your best option. Proud NYJ fan, Nick Shine, Jets Content Loyalty. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate all your support. See you, Brian. You're on board with Tigo and Allen. I get that. Wild Wave, appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate your support. Wild Wave. I'm not worried about Woody walking over Glenn. I'm worried about him walking over Agnew. Now here's the interesting point here. Woody Johnson, you look at, since he's been the owner of the team, he's only meddled when he does not trust the head coach, when he does not trust the general manager, when he's trusted his guys. Example, Rex Ryan, Mike Tannenbaum. He never meddled. He let them do his job. So I've spoken about it. But when, for example, I think Agnew will be interviewed for the job. I think Glenn will be interviewed for the job. So when both of them are sitting down and interviewing, I think what they're going to say is, you want me to come here. You want me to come here? Guess what? You have to give me full autonomy. You have to let me do my job. Now, I don't know how much say Glenn would have in personnel decisions. I think Agnew would I think Agnew would be more important here if the Jets were to hire both of them than Glenn. But again, the elite names are only going to want to come here if you give them full autonomy over the organization. That's how I feel. Let's see. Oh yeah, Alan, you're a big Iowa fan. Of course, Jack Campbell, linebacker from Detroit. He's over there in Iowa. Let's see anything else. Brian Spags can be the head coach if he brings Andy over as OC. Let's see. Allen doesn't like Louis Reddick. There we go. For sure. You got to stay away from Reddick. Appreciate you, Wild Wave. JD Jets. I fully believe that the Jets will never be good until I completely give up hope. And who knows when my delusional ass will finally give up hope. Give up. Ha ha ha. So it's interesting because we went into this year with such sky high expectations. I think my mentality right now is going to be, I don't think I can enter after this year, I don't think I can enter another Jets season with expectations. I don't. I really don't know how us as fans can enter a Jets season with sky high expectations after what they've done to us. Not only last year with Rodgers going down, but now with fully healthy Aaron Rodgers, who's played every single snap this season with the exception of garbage time in San Francisco. I don't know how we can look at ourselves and say, well, this team potentially can be 4-11 compared to when we went 7-10 with Zach Wilson 2 consecutive seasons, and how we can look at ourselves and say we're going to have sky high expectations for this team. I simply don't know how we could do it. I don't, after what they've done to us. 14 years down, no playoffs. Absolutely insane. Alan, I like the ideal, but I keep hearing Vrabel covets 32-year-old Tommy Rees as his OC. Not a big fan of his. I like the rest. I also heard he covets Ryan Cowden, one of the assistant general managers with the Giants, as his GM. So I wouldn't personally like that, but he's going to have a lot of say in personnel decisions anyways. I think if you can get Vrabel, you you bring in whoever he wants as GM and an OC. Because I trust Vrabel that he knows the right guys and he's able to bring in the right people. So I think that's if you're gonna get Vrabel, I think you do anything you can to land a guy like Vrabel. Wildwave, truth be told, I don't think Vrabel comes here. I don't see a world where Woody gives up power. Yeah, that's an interesting one because Brian Costello of the New York Post said earlier today that he thinks Vrabel, what he's been told within NFL executives and NFL sources, obviously, that he thinks Vrabel is going to take the job in Vegas with the Raiders. If the Raiders can go ahead and draft a quarterback this year, that might be an interesting job for him. His connection with Tom Brady obviously involved in the Raiders organization, so it's interesting to see if Vrabel goes over there and takes the job. But again, if you have to do anything in your power to get Vrabel, he said he will take the job if he's open. If he approves of the general manager hire. So I think you got to do everything you can to really get Vrabel. Let's see. Sharon, appreciate you tuning in. Vrabel, just said it, but yeah, Mike Vrabel, you have to go after him. You have to try him. Chase, appreciate you tuning in. What about Todd Monken for head coach? Raven offense has been balling both rushing and through the air, and Todd Monken has been a key reason for that. He's in head coaching convos last year. Monken for head coach. Yeah, Chase, Monken, first off, appreciate the comment, appreciate the support. Monken is a really interesting name. I've listed him as a top head coach candidate. I prioritize experience here. I'd put him right below that Vrabel, Brian Flores tier. I have Vrabel as my number one option, Brian Flores as my number two, both of which are in the A tier. Obviously have a ton of head coaching experience. I'd probably put him in that B tier right below those two guys. He's done great work working with Lamar Jackson. And again, the Ravens offense, like you mentioned, has been great. Derrick Henry leading the way on the ground. Also, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, that whole, receiving core over in Baltimore. I wouldn't mind Monken as head coach. If you're going to go with a first-timer, Monken would be one of the only guys I'd approve of. Again, he was a college head coach, but hasn't been a head coach at the NFL level. I trust him to surround himself with a solid staff as well. So if you're going to go with a first-timer, Monken would be one of the few guys I'd approve of. But I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in just past the 40-minute mark here on the show. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Get your final questions, comments, thoughts in. Hope you guys had for those who celebrate, great Merry Christmas. Yesterday, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, happy New Year's, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in again. Final thoughts to get in the chat here before I wrap up this show. Appreciate you all tuning in. Chase, interesting. Yeah, Vrabel and Flores, great options. Happy to tune in. Chase, appreciate it. Again, you have to covet experience when it comes to this job. I'm tired of having first-timers learn on the spot in the biggest media market in the world. So you got to go after experience here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts to that for sure. BC, I meant to say hi to you. BC, appreciate you tuning in the chat. Chase, defensive coach or offensive coach better for the Jets? Experience first, but for example, both Flores and Vrabel are defensive coaches, but I put them in the category of experience. So if you're going to go after Flores or Vrabel, I'd say, I guess, defensive. But if you're going to go for a first-timer, it's interesting because I like Liam Cohen as a potential first-timer from the Bucs. Todd Monken, who's an offensive mind, you just mentioned in the chat. So he's an offensive mind. Another defensive mind I would be okay with is Aaron Glenn. Played for the Jets. He knows the organization really, really well. And again, he has a great staff over in Detroit. So I trust him to poach a lot of people from Detroit's coaching staff and bring them in. And I think that could be something really interesting. So the defensive guys I like, Flores, Vrabel, and Glenn. Offensive guys I like, Monken and blanking on his name, Liam Cohen. I just said it. Yeah, Liam Cohen, Todd Monken are the two offensive guys I like. But again, we've always been talking about it. It's so funny that the defense has been such a strong suit and the offense has killed us. It's been the complete opposite this season. It's absolutely crazy to think because last year the defense was elite. Same with the special teams, and the offense was absolutely awful, primarily due to Aaron Rodgers going down four plays into the season. Now roles are reversed. The team simply can't play complementary football. That's killed them, especially special teams, the kicking issues, defenses blown games late, and there's been games where the offense just hasn't showed up. And they're just a poor coach team overall. That's what it is. So if you get the right head coach in here, and I mean, I think they're going to draft a quarterback, whether it's this year or next year. For the long term, you have to get the next quarterback right, especially if you use a first-round pick on him. But if you get a real coach in here next year and you bring back Aaron Rodgers and restructure his deal along with restructuring Devontae Adams' deal, I could see a world where this team puts together a 9-8, 10-7 season potentially. Because you look, and there's been several games you could point to there. This team is lost due to incompetent kicking and awful coaching, penalties, everything. So you get a real coach in here. I would not necessarily rule out playoffs and give up on next year's season. Let's see. Jeffrey, appreciate you tuning in. Aaron Rodgers' tenure ends in Orchard Park after a blindside hit by an edge who flies past Mac Mitchell. Yeah, I mean, Rodgers, again, he's on the injury report this week. So when he's on the injury report, you know it's bad. He's dealing with a knee injury that he suffered on that fumble, that one sack that he had last week. But I don't like when he gets hit. And you threw your score prediction in here above 34-14 Bills. I have something like that. I think the Bills score over 13 points. I think the Jets lose by over 3 possessions. I think it's going to be an absolute blowout. Absolute blowout, for sure. 1,000%, Jeffrey. Accountability is missing at One Jets Drive. Cultural overhaul. You got to bring in a leader, someone who's going to hold these players accountable. That's what a Mike Vrabel does. That's what an Aaron Glenn does. Those are, Brian Flores does. So those are the main guys I think the Jets should covet. Wild Wave, I will lose my mind if we use our premium picks on a quarterback. The Wild Wave, where do you stand right now in this year's draft? Even if they decide to go after a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders, you'd still lose your mind over that. Where do you stand from like a draft standpoint right now? Who do you want to target? I want to get your thoughts there. Again, about to wrap up here shortly, so get your final questions, comments, thoughts in. Last chance to call into the show. Pinned comment in the chat. Let's see. Do we have any final comments? Here we go. Harlan. Mike was interviewed by the Jets before they hired. Yep, I remember they interviewed him in 2019. They are the guy who coaches football to where it's going. Adam Case. Yeah. Monken interviewed for that job. Kingsbury interviewed for the job. So two of the guys the Jets potentially might target, they actually interviewed just a few years ago. I don't know, after the Jets didn't select him as the head coach that year, I don't know if he'd be even open to really taking the job this time around. Especially, I think the thing that might steal an offensive mind like a Monken, like a Liam Cohen away is there's no young quarterback for them to work with. And quite frankly, we don't really know who the quarterback of this team is going to be next season. Could they somehow pull off, a Jalen Milroe if he goes back to school? You decide to go ahead and draft him in, late first round, early second round, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, then that makes the job more appealing. But if, a guy like Aaron Rodgers comes back next season, they start a Jameis Winston, they start a Tyrod Taylor, why would an offensive guru like Monken prefer to go here when I think a nice opening would be the Bears' job for someone like him, someone like a Todd Monken, like a Cliff Kingsbury, when you're able to work with a young quarterback like Caleb Williams. Let's see. Ooh, Jimmy Jets coming in, and here we go. Jimmy Jets coming in. He's dropping 10 memberships. Jimmy, really appreciate all your support. If you hear your name called, you are now a member of the show. Danette Randell, Chris Cortez, Addison, Ali, LLZ, Life, our guy Boy Green, Amir Landon, our guy Celso Porto, Harry V, Dan the Jets fan, Steve V, you are all members. Thanks to Jimmy Jets. Jimmy Jets, appreciate the very kind donation, and I appreciate all of your support here on the show. Appreciate it. Happy holidays, Jimmy. Means the world, man. Really, really, really appreciate you. Yeah, Alan, for sure. Appreciate you in the chat, and appreciate everyone really for tuning in. I think that's gonna do it for us now. So I appreciate everyone for watching. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Greatly appreciate all the support. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.